think the building industry as a whole, it's kind of like that theory of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if they don't know it, they'll put a number to it, then they'll win the package, and then they'll go and source someone.
Welcome to Fireproof, the Passive Fire podcast, where we delve into the world of passive fire protection. Join the PROFINISH team as we dig into the issues we see on site and in our industry every day, and find out how you can save time, money, and headaches on major construction projects. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today it's myself, Russell Whiteford. I'm going to be talking with Justin Bliss, one of the directors of PROFINISH Fire Protection. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Russ.
It's going to be a bit of fun. I suppose just to set the scene, we're going to be talking about Intumescent paint today. But if we backtrack a little bit, we won't go right back through the journey of the company, but PROFINISH Fire Protection was born out of Bliss Sandblasting, and that was your business as a sole operator. So it's evolved to become what it is today. You had an industrial coatings background. You had industrial coatings applicators, and you guys were professionals at coating steel, sandblasting and painting steel. And I think it was a natural shift at some point to look into the fire-rated coatings and to move into the commercial construction space. Why did you think it was a good idea, and why was Intumescent a good fit for the business?
Good question, Russ. I suppose to begin with, we built a lot of relationships with a lot of fabricators along the way. There was a little bit of interest there on fabricators asking us whether or not we had heard or apply Intumescent coatings. From there, did a little bit of research with our suppliers, and they were spending a lot of money on the research and development of Intumescent coatings. So for me, it was like there's an opportunity in the market where not a lot of industrial coaters are familiar with Intumescent coatings. So from there, I thought we'd do a little bit more research, see how much of the market share's out there. From there, we identified there was a bit getting in front of those people that had those projects was a little bit of a challenge. And we identified that we probably needed to expand our wings, broaden our wings a little bit, and jump into other areas of the passive fire protection industry as well. Yeah,
so I think Intumescent was kind of where it all started, I suppose. It was the birth of PROFINISH Fire Protection, coming out of a coatings background. One of the things that we do is we always talk about the three pillars of passive fire. So we're going to cover things around the design phase of a project, the build phase of a project, and the documentation. It's really important for us that we work with our clients through those three stages. So we're going to use that sort of to frame today's discussion. But maybe before we get into that, do you want to just give people an idea of what Intumescent paint is? What does it actually do?
Intumescent, so there's basically three types of passive fire protection. There's the board component, and there's a vermiculite spray component, and then there's an Intumescent coatings component. Intumescent is designed to look like a painted finish, and then at critical temperature of 700 degrees, it expands and protects the steel from that heat and that fire for anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the thickness of the coating. So
we're talking particularly around structural steel protection here, so that if there was a fire, the steel would maintain its integrity for the period that it needed to allow people to get out or allow the fire to be put out. So if we think about the design phase of a project, I actually think that a lot of times we get asked to quote Intumescent work first, and sometimes there's a lack of understanding of what Intumescent actually is, and people have it sort of spec'd right through the project, and it ends up getting designed out. So a lot of times it's our entry into looking at a project. But if we think about you becoming involved in a project over the years, when you're first involved in a project, what are some of the design issues that you see when people spec Intumescent on a project?
Intumescent is it's not as cost effective as the other two options. A lot of the time, over a bigger project, it'll blow a project out, a project's budget out by quite a lot. It's up to 6 to 10 times the cost of a board project. So unless that piece of steel is being exposed and it wants to be a feature in a building, then it'll get boarded up and it'll look like just a plasterboard, or it'll have a false ceiling in it and never be seen again.
Yep.
So it really is critical. So usually they go back to the drawing board, figure out what needs to be exposed and what can be hidden. And cost is a big intumescent coatings.
Yeah, I guess you've touched on one of the advantages is that you get a good aesthetic. It's probably the best looking finish that you can get with a passive fire product, and that's why it does get kept in the project, or that's one of the selling points, because you maintain that steel look, which is pretty important. But I guess coming back to design flaws, what are some of the flaws that we see when we're quoting a project in the design?
A lot of time there's so again the intumescent coatings need a 50 mil clearance. So if you want to fix framing or anything like that, hard up against the steel that needs to be protected, a lot of the time the framing goes in. Builder will ask us to come in and do the intumescent coatings, and then all of a sudden they'll have to rip the walls down to get it done. So the only passive fire protection option they have there is to board the steel, and then you can fix directly to it. That's the only option.
Yep.
That one.
Yeah, I think it happens a bit where you get a nice steel beam and they want to attach windows to it and they want to maintain that steel look, but it's just not going to be achievable.
It happens a lot, and that's where we work with the builders, the fire engineers, and try and get the best, most affordable option for those guys. We're not in here to try and milk as much money as we can out of the customer.
Yep.
We're there to service them, so we can build long, strong relationships with them.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what we do sort of in the early phase. The design phase of a project is sort of working out what's going to be the best in terms of cost effective, buildable on site. It can actually be delivered. It's going to achieve the FRL, and then there's things that come into it like aesthetic and design and finish. It's probably the only fire protection product that we install, maybe sometimes penetrations, but where we actually top coat it, and the fire protection product is the finished product. Everything else that we do generally gets hidden away in a building, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So again, the finished product is a painted finish. So the finish, what the steelwork looks like, it has to mimic pretty much if we've done an epoxy coatings and some polyurethane coatings around the building that are exposed. It has to match that. So there's a fair bit of work there that needs to go into making something. Epoxies are going on at 125 microns. Our intumescent coatings are going on, say, 3,000 to 5,000 microns. There's a big difference in what that finished product looks like. So definitely need some skilled applicators to do that. Just not your average Joe.
So I suppose you've touched on a little bit of information there, just the thickness of the coating. It's different to a normal paint coating. Do you want to talk about how it's applied and just give some explanation around the thickness? Yep.
So it's an airless. We use our Graco either King pump or a Mark V electric airless pump. They're basically medium to high solids pumps that put the product through. With that, for our application, you can't just put 3,000 or 5,000 microns on in one go. It ends up with a really ugly finish, that one. So it's definitely, we've built up techniques over the years to figure out how many layers of paint we can put on to achieve what we need to and still have a really nice aesthetic look. There's a lot of training and development that goes into our guys in the field and in our yard to make that happen, and it's been a lot of trial and error over the years. I've personally done a lot of error. Built those systems myself pretty much.
You've pushed the boundaries to
and
make sure you find out what doesn't work.
Got very friendly with the sanders and grinders there for a while, trying to repair works. But so it's not just a product where someone can come in, get the paint delivered, get the steel delivered, and deliver a nice finish where the customer's going to be happy. And at the end of the day, it's about what the customer's happy with. It's not about us thinking it's okay sending it out and getting paid for it. We really have to make it's usually architects that are doing the final walkthrough, and they've got this vision at the start of the project. So it's up to us to make sure we deliver on that.
That's right. I mean, we're in the industry of compliance. Like, it's all about complying with the FRL, but at the same time with Intumescent, it's also aesthetic.
Yeah, it is.
They're paying for the finish. So with that, our factory work you touched on, we apply, I think we've changed the way that we do this recently, where we apply a majority of the coating in our factory, and that happens over a period of days. Then we actually finish off with the last coat and the top coat on site. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Do. So intumescent coatings aren't as hard as epoxies. So they're not as hard wearing. So loading, transport, unloading, and erection, there's a lot of problematic areas there where it gets erected with steel. It's got to travel 100 to 300 k's to get to its destination. So just damage is common with the softness of the product. So usually we go on site, in past days gone by, we'd finish the product in the yard, send it to site, and we'd always have to do touch-ups and to match in intumescent coatings and then match in top coats. It's just near impossible to
Really
get that,
recoating the whole thing on site.
Yeah, so we've decided to do say 80% thickness in our yard. Then we've got our on-site spray team to come on site, do the repair work, finish off the last 500 microns, say, on site, and then do the entire lot of the top coat on site. Adds just every time, because of the thickness of the steel of the product, there's a lot of orange peel in the product. So every time we sand anything, that's a smooth finish versus the rest of the steelwork, which usually has a consistent orange peel about it. So we just found that it just wasn't, for us, it wasn't PROFINISH standard to walk away from a job and think, convince ourselves that was a job well done. So we've kind of changed it now to do all the repair work, final 1 or 2 coats on site, and then all the top coating, and seem to be getting a lot of positive feedback from doing it this way.
Yeah. Well, when aesthetics is such a big part of it, it's important that we get that right. So, you touched on damage. Is there, and this is something that's common in the build phase, where we finish the coating or finish 80% of the coating, then gets loaded onto trucks. It gets unloaded using chains a lot of the time, and it gets installed. What is the damage that occurs, and how could builders maybe mitigate or reduce that?
It's really hard because it's the law that all steelwork has to be, you have to use chains on site to erect, just to avoid slipping. We've tried slings in the past in the yard, and they work really well. But when it gets to site, it's law that you've got to use chains to erect steelwork. So the damage is inevitable, which is where we just play the game. We understand the game. What damage is going to happen? What's the best process we can come up with to make sure that finished product is still of the standard, industry standard, and PROFINISH standard?
Yep. I suppose if we know that that's going to happen, it's important that we educate the builder on that process, which is something that we try to do when we're quoting the project.
Absolutely.
Give them a really clear expectation as to the time frame to install. So, the steel could sit in our factory for, 4 or 5 days while it has coat after coat applied each day. And then also the time frame to then come in and rectify and actually provide that finished product.
Yep. There's a lot of the fabricating industry is not really familiar with intumescent coatings, so it's kind of up to us to educate them before it leaves our yard. What's going to happen? Usually at quoting stage, they just think paint's paint, so they treat it accordingly. And usually there's a cost there because of just people not being aware of what an intumescent coating is and how thick it is and how soft it is. There's epoxy intumescents out there. There's pleural injection intumescent coatings out there, but they're all next level costs again. And at the end of the day, we're trying to offer the best cost effective solution for our customers.
Yeah, so you touched on different types of coatings, and you mentioned there's the epoxy, there's also water based. What do we tend to use, and is there different scenarios where we would use one versus the other?
There is, yes. Internally, we use the water-based products.
Yep.
We've just found when it first came out, the intumescent coatings, we're using water-based products for external as well, but there was a lot of delamination happening 12 months down the track where just sheets of top coat were coming off. Usually it's from pinholes, just the top coat not being 100% a 100% film. So
Yep.
if there's any pinholes or imperfections, they'd water would leak in, reactivate the water-based product. Yeah, some delamination would happen, and reworks, which again costs money.
Yep.
So internally is water-based, externally is solvent-based. So
Yep.
again, it can't get reactivated. It's a lot harder product as well.
Yep.
The product we tend to use there is Nullifier,
Mm-hmm.
102. It seems to be the best one for us at the moment, the one we recommend. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a range. In terms of the water-based, why would we use a water-based paint internally?
Internally,
Yep.
it's supplying the customer with the most cost-effective
Yeah, gotcha.
product.
Yep.
So user-friendly as well. We're not worrying about it as a two-pack component to all epoxies. So you've got pot life.
Yep.
The product, you've only got 45 minutes to let it go, or you've got to wash it all out,
unusable.
or it'll destroy your pumps. And solvent, if we've got to do any on-site coatings, that solvent component is a big no-no with toxicities and on work sites and that sort of stuff. So,
Well, that was the thing I was hoping you were going to touch on. It can become an OH&S issue where we have to really barricade the area that we're working on and making sure that people aren't walking through that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Fully enclose it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare, bit of a landmine.
So how do we then ensure quality and compliance? You know, we said that we're in the industry of compliance, and our customers are paying us for an outcome, which is that the steel is going to be fire rated. So how do we ensure compliance?
Yes, so all steel work goes back to the steel suppliers. They're the ones that give us the thicknesses for the steel. So we are, in essence, we are professional applicators. We're not the people that designate the steel, the film thicknesses of the product or anything like that. We put it on. So then we've created ITPs and internal QA systems to align with what we've been recommended. From there, we ensure we complete all those, and we make sure it's all done in accordance, and then we supply the QA, the ITPs, and the certificates at the end of the projects.
Yep, that's what I was going to ask you next was what does the customer get as the end result, I suppose? And there's a handover manual or some handover documentation that outlines everything that's been installed, certificates to show that the product's been installed as per a tested system by a certified applicator. There's also warranties, ITPs, QAs, and photos.
Yep. All inclusives.
That's right. So, is there anything else that you wanted to sort of touch on before we wrap up, just around intumescent coating? If you were talking to a fabricator or a builder through either the design, build, or documentation phase of their project, is there anything that you think is really important that we haven't covered?
I think the building industry as a whole, it's kind of like that theory of you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if they don't know it, they'll put a number to it, then they'll win the package, and then they'll go and source someone. For us, we're available to all of our customers, new and old. If there's any questions out there that need to be answered, it's all free of charge until we hopefully win that package off you.
That's right.
Or from you. Yeah. So, there's a little bit of reassurance there that you've priced it well. There's no hidden things going to pop up along the way. We kind of take all that stress and that lack of knowledge away and put everything at ease, so it's a smooth process for you guys as well.
Yep. Yeah, perfect. I think you've summed it up really well. Well, I think that's we're going to wrap it up there, mate. It's been really good. I know that you said at the start that you don't do media, but I know that you're a wealth of knowledge, and I just wanted to try to extract some of that knowledge out of you today. So thanks for spending some time with me.
Thank you, Russ.